Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Settle in, wherever you are. Let the space around you soften, and the noise of the world fade to a gentle hum. There is no need to do anything right now. No need to fix, to solve, to strive. Just breathe. In, and out. This is a space of remembering, a sanctuary woven from silence and timeless wisdom, a whisper from the heart of the Buddha himself, traveling across centuries to find you, right here, in this moment of need. Many come here bearing a quiet weight, a sense that the path has grown dim. I have known that dimness. And the first, most gentle truth I learned from the depths of Buddhist teaching is this: the dark is not your enemy. It is merely the canvas upon which the faintest star becomes visible. Your story is not ending here. It is waiting, with infinite patience, for you to turn the page. Let me begin with a story from my own early days of seeking. I was journeying through a vast, ancient forest, one that seemed to hold its breath under a canopy of timeless green. I was lost, not just in the trees, but in my own life. Purpose felt like a myth. After days of wandering, I came upon a clearing where an old man was tending to a single, towering bamboo plant. He wasn't watering it from a pot. Instead, he carried water from a distant stream, one small clay cup at a time, walking the long path back and forth, hour after hour. I watched, baffled by what seemed like supreme inefficiency. "Forgive me," I finally said, "but there is a stream right there in the woods. Would it not be easier to plant the bamboo there, where the water is abundant?" The old man paused, placing his cup gently at the base of the plant. He smiled, his eyes like deep, still pools. "Ah," he said softly. "But the bamboo does not need to be at the stream. It needs to learn to grow toward the water. My walking is not a chore. It is an invitation. Each cup I bring is a call to its roots: reach. Stretch. Seek your source, even from a distance. If I planted it at the water's edge, its roots would grow lazy and shallow. Here, they must dig deep, weaving a hidden net of strength in the dark earth to find the sustenance they need. Its visible strength," he said, tapping the tall, resilient stalk, "is born from this unseen, persistent search." I stood there, speechless. He was not just talking about bamboo. He was speaking of the human spirit. Buddhism teaches us of tanha, craving, the root of suffering. We often believe our pain comes from not having what we want, from being too far from our stream of happiness, success, or peace. We frantically try to replant ourselves in what looks like an easier spot. But the Buddha's wisdom suggests a different path. The difficulty, the distance, the very feeling of being lost in the woods, is the old man's long walk with the cup. It is an invitation, not a punishment. It is a call to your roots: reach. Stretch. Seek your source from within. The strength you are building now, in this time of yearning, is not visible. It is the intricate, deep root system of your character, your patience, your resilience. Your journey to the water is what makes you unshakable when the winds finally come. Do not curse the distance. Honor the reach. If this notion of the growing root speaks to you, if you feel a need for a space where such gentle reminders are offered, consider subscribing to Monk's Moon Temple. Subscribing is not adding a chore to your life. It is simply placing a small, clear cup at the base of your own spirit, a periodic invitation to reach, to remember, to grow toward your own source of peace. You are welcome here, exactly as you are. Let us breathe into that idea for a moment. The feeling of being down, of carrying a weight, is so often a feeling of isolation. It feels unique, a private storm. But one of the most liberating truths in Buddhism is the principle of Anicca, or impermanence. The competitor spoke of nothing being permanent. Let me offer you a different sensory experience of this truth. Imagine yourself not as a person standing in a storm, but as the sky itself. A vast, boundless, open sky. Your thoughts, your fears, the sharp ache in your chest. These are not the sky. They are weather. Clouds, some dark and thunderous, some thin and wispy with worry. Rain of tears. The blizzards of anxiety. You are the space that holds the weather. You are the silent, aware blue that exists before, during, and after the storm system passes. The sky does not cling to the perfect, fluffy cloud. It does not struggle against the tornado. It allows. It observes. It remains, fundamentally unchanged. Your pain is a weather pattern. By its very nature, a system of weather has a beginning, a duration, and an end. It moves. It transforms. It dissipates. To believe the storm is the eternal sky is the core of the suffering. The Buddha's enlightenment was, in part, a profound remembering of this sky-like nature within all beings. When you feel the cold front of despair moving in, can you, even for a single breath, touch the part of you that is the sky? The patient, spacious witness that says, "Ah, here is heavy rain," without becoming the rain itself. This is not denial. It is the deepest form of sanity. It is remembering your true home. The weather is always changing. The sky is always present. You are that sky. I remember a winter I spent in a small hermitage, a place of profound quiet. The only water source was an old, hand-dug well with a heavy iron bucket. One morning, after a deep freeze, I found the well's surface sealed with a thick plate of ice. I needed water. My first reaction was frustration, then a futile anger at the ice. I even considered striking it. But force would have risked damaging the bucket or the well's lining. So, I sat. I had no choice. I simply sat by the well in the weak winter sun. Hours passed. I watched my breath fog in the air. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, under the persistent, gentle insistence of the ambient light, the ice lost its grip. It didn't shatter. It simply softened, thinned, and finally opened with a quiet sigh, revealing the deep, dark water beneath. I lowered the bucket and drew up water so cold and clear it tasted like the earth itself. That well taught me more about patience, Kanti, than any scripture. Our modern world is the striking of the pickaxe. We are conditioned to force, to immediate solutions, to breaking through obstacles with sheer will. But some forms of ice, the ice of grief, of a stalled dream, of a heart that feels frozen, cannot be safely broken. They must be thawed by the patient, persistent warmth of your own compassionate awareness. You sit with it. You stop fighting the fact of the ice. You simply bring the gentle, non-judgmental light of your attention to it. You breathe. You wait. The thaw has its own timeline, dictated by depths you cannot see. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things arise and pass due to causes and conditions. The causes for your thaw are already at work the moment you stop striking and start sitting. The ice will soften. The deep, nourishing waters of your own spirit will become accessible again. Trust the sun. Be the sun. This leads us to a beautiful and challenging paradox at the heart of Buddhist practice. When you are in your own pain, the mind contracts. It becomes a small, dark room with walls of me and my suffering. The instinct is to huddle in the center, to tend only to your own wounds. Yet, the Buddha's path of bodhicitta, the awakened heart, offers a key that seems counterintuitive. The key to that dark room is not inside it with you. It is in the hand of another person who is also sitting in their own dark room. When you reach out to help them, even with a whisper of kindness, even when you feel you have nothing to give, you are not leaving your room. You are discovering that the walls are an illusion. You are tapping into a vast, interconnected space, *praditya dependent origination, where compassion flows like a subterranean river beneath all our separate floors. Your act of helping, in your own pain, is you drilling a well shaft down to that shared river. In that moment, your private suffering is translated into a universal language. It becomes the very bridge that connects you to another soul. And in that connection, the loneliness that magnifies pain evaporates. You are no longer a solitary sufferer. You are a compassionate participant in the human experience. This is the alchemy the Buddha taught, turning the lead of personal anguish into the gold of universal empathy. Your pain, understood, becomes your capacity to heal, starting with yourself. I witnessed this alchemy in the most ordinary of places. Years ago, I regularly visited a tiny, worn-out city park. Its one bench was always occupied by an elderly woman who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her slumped shoulders. She never smiled. One day, I saw a young man, himself looking ragged and weary, sit on the far end of her bench. He was eating a simple sandwich. He noticed her. He paused, then silently broke his sandwich in two, offering her half. She stared, then slowly took it. Not a word was exchanged. But the next day, she was on the bench, and she had 2 apples. She offered one to him. This silent trade of small foods became a ritual. I never heard them speak. But over the weeks, their postures changed. They sat a little closer. The woman's shoulders began to soften. One day, I saw them both smile at a squirrel's antics. They had built a bridge of silent compassion out of their own scarcity, and in doing so, each found a fragment of abundance they couldn't find alone. This is the practice. Not a grand gesture, but the simple, courageous offering of half a sandwich when you are hungry yourself. So, we sit with this understanding: our roots are growing in the dark, we are the sky behind the weather, and our thaw comes from patient warmth. But the mind, that clever storyteller, often resists. It spins tales of permanence. It whispers, "This will never change. I will always feel this way." This is where we must introduce one of the Buddha's most practical and profound tools: mindfulness of the story itself. Buddhism does not ask you to stop thinking. It invites you to change your relationship to your thoughts. See your mind not as a source of absolute truth, but as a talented, sometimes overly dramatic, playwright. It is constantly drafting scripts. The tragedy of my lost opportunity, the endless saga of my inadequacy, the horror of what might happen tomorrow. You have been cast as the doomed hero in these plays without your conscious consent. Mindfulness is the gentle act of walking backstage. It is noticing the playwright at the desk, scribbling furiously. You see the props, the memories, the fears, being assembled. You hear the director, your conditioning, yelling cues. And from this backstage vantage point, you realize you are not the character on stage. You are the entire theater. You contain the play, but you are not defined by it. Let me share a story about this very realization. There is a small, forgotten valley I once traveled through, where the wind had a peculiar habit. It would sweep down from the mountain passes and, finding a certain cluster of rocks with perfect fissures and hollows, would create a sound. Not just any sound. It would moan. A low, human-sounding, desolate moan that echoed through the whole basin. The first time I camped there, I was unsettled. The sound was so full of sorrow, it seemed the very earth was grieving. I lay awake, listening to what felt like the voice of all suffering. The next day, I went in search of the source. I found the rocks, ordinary, weathered sandstone. I sat and waited for the wind. When it came, I watched. Air moved through stone. Physics created resonance. That was all. The mournful song was not an expression of the rock's soul, it was an accident of shape and flow. In that moment, I saw my own mind. The winds of experience, a loss, a harsh word, a failure, blow through the particular architecture of my personal history, with its unique fissures and hollows. And my mind produces a sound, a story of sadness, a melody of worry. For years, I had believed the psalm was the truth of me. But I was just the rock formation. The sound was just weather passing through. The Buddhist teaching on Anatta, or not self, points to this. You are not the fixed, solid entity your thoughts describe. You are a process, a temporary arrangement of elements through which the winds of life blow. You can learn the shape of your own rocks, and you can learn to listen to the wind song without mistaking it for your eternal truth. This is why the practice of meditation is not about achieving blankness. It is about becoming a connoisseur of your own inner weather patterns. You sit, and you notice, a warm front of nostalgia is moving through. Here is the high-pressure system of planning. Now, a sudden squall of irritation. You note it with the detached interest of a gardener watching the sky. You don't run outside to wrestle the clouds. You simply observe, knowing each pattern has a lifespan. This observational space is where your freedom grows. It is the backstage. From here, you can choose whether to buy a ticket to today's matinee performance of the disaster drama, or whether to simply listen to the wind in the rocks, acknowledge its temporary sound, and let it fade on the breeze. And what of our relationships to others in this grand, windy theater? Often, our deepest aches come from connections frayed, love lost, or trust broken. We build fortresses around our hearts, stone by stone, vow by vow, never to be hurt again. The Buddhist path of metta, or loving kindness, offers not the dismantling of the wall, but the installation of a gate. A gate you can choose to open. I learned this from a river, not a person. There was a river near the monastery that, every few years, would flood its banks. The villagers would curse it, build their barriers higher, and struggle to repair the damage. One year, a very old farmer did not rebuild his wall. Instead, he planted willow saplings along the bank, deep-rooted, flexible trees. When the next flood came, the willows bent. Their roots held the soil. The water spread, but did not gouge. It slowed, depositing rich silt on his fields. Where others saw destruction, he had prepared for a nourishing embrace. He had installed a gate of flexibility in his defense. Our heart's walls are often rigid levees, built from past pain. We think strength is in the height and thickness of the stone. Metta practice is the planting of willows. It is cultivating a flexible, rooted kindness that can bend with the flood of another's anger, or your own disappointment, without breaking and without letting the torrent carry everything away. It begins not with a feeling of overwhelming love for all beings, but with a simple, directed wish, like planting a single seed: may I be safe. May I be peaceful. Then, you imagine someone easy: may you be safe. May you be peaceful. You are not tearing down your wall. You are simply planting a willow at its base. Over time, these plantings create a buffer zone of compassion. They allow the waters of relationship to move without causing catastrophic erosion. The Buddha taught this as a protection for the mind. The gate of kindness is your ultimate control point. You decide when to open it, and to whom. But the act of planting the willows ensures that when you do, the interaction nourishes rather than destroys. There is a tale from my teacher that has always stayed with me. He spoke of a man who kept a precious lantern in his window, its light a guide for travelers on a dark road. One night, a storm blew the lantern over, shattering its glass and extinguishing its flame. The man was distraught. He gathered the broken pieces, weeping over their sharp edges. For nights, the window was dark. Then, one clear evening, he noticed something. Without the lantern's focused glow, the entire night sky was visible. The spill of the Milky Way, the glitter of countless stars, the soft glow of the moon, they had always been there, but his singular, man-made light had blinded him to their vast, gentle illumination. He never rebuilt the lantern. Instead, he cleared his windowsill and spent his evenings learning the constellations. He had lost his small light but discovered the universe's boundless one. We do this with our happiness. We have a specific idea of what our lantern should be: a certain job, a particular relationship, a defined state of health. When life shatters that specific form, we grieve over the sharp shards of our broken dream. We sit in the dark, believing all light is gone. Buddhism encourages us, in that very darkness, to look up. To look out. The end of one form of light is the prerequisite for perceiving a vaster, more diffuse, and more constant source of illumination. The inherent peace of the present moment, the simple beauty of being alive, the interconnected glow of all things. The Buddha's enlightenment was not the lighting of a new, personal lantern. It was the blowing out of the small, flickering lamp of the separate self, revealing the dawn that had always been present. Your disappointment, your failure, your loss, it may have shattered a lantern. Please, do not spend all your nights clutching the pieces. Let your eyes adjust to the grander, quieter light that remains. It is your true nature. This brings us to a quiet cornerstone of navigating difficulty, the practice of gratitude. Not the shiny, performative gratitude for obvious blessings, but a gritty, deliberate thankfulness for the very texture of the struggle itself. This is not about pretending the pain is good. It is about acknowledging it as your teacher. In the monastic tradition, there is a practice of bowing. One bows to the Buddha, to the teaching, to the community. But one also learns to bow inwardly to the obstacle, to the difficult person, to the inner critic. You don't bow because you like them. You bow because you recognize their role in your awakening. They are the whetstone against which your patience is sharpened. They are the closed door that forces you to find a window. They are the friction that generates the warmth of your compassion. I try to practice this with the humble spider. I am, admittedly, not fond of spiders. In my simple room, they would often spin webs in corners. My first impulse was to sweep them away. But I made an agreement with myself: I would not destroy a web that was still being actively woven. I would watch. And in watching, I saw an artist of immense resilience. A breeze would tear a section. The spider would return, not with sigh or complaint, but with silent, diligent repair. It used the broken threads as new anchor points. The web, after many repairs, was often stronger, more intricate, more adaptable than the first perfect one. My annoyance became all. Now, when I face a setback, a project torn apart, a plan unraveled, I sometimes think of that spider. I bow to the setback. It is not my enemy. It is the breeze that has torn my web. Can I, without drama, use the broken threads as new anchors? Can I see the repair not as a defeat, but as the creation of a more resilient, interesting design? This is the gritty gratitude. Thank you, setback, for showing me where my web was weak. Thank you, fear, for highlighting what I care about. Thank you, exhaustion, for reminding me to rest. This bowing does not magically fix things. It changes the chemical composition of the experience from one of war to one of curious, respectful engagement. Let's breathe into a deeper layer. We've spoken of being the sky and the theater. But sometimes, the storm is so violent, the play so convincing, that we forget we are anything but the character being battered on stage. In these moments, Buddhism offers a simple, profound anchor: the body. The breath is one doorway, but the entire physical form is a temple of present moment awareness. Your thoughts can be lost in yesterday or terrified of tomorrow, but your feet are always on the ground right now. The feeling of the chair against your back, the weight of your hands in your lap, the subtle dance of temperature on your skin, these are anchors in the eternal now. The Buddha's teaching of Kayagata Sati, mindfulness of the body, is a homecoming. When the mind's stories become a deafening roar, you can drop out of the sky of concepts and land, softly, here. In the body. In the sensation. In the undeniable reality of this breath, this heartbeat. Pain may be here, but it is a sensation happening now. Anxiety may be here, but it is a flutter in the chest now. By anchoring in the body's present tense reality, you step out of the mind's time-traveling machine. You find a stability that is not conceptual, but visceral. You are no longer at the mercy of the story about the pain, you are in a conscious relationship with the direct experience of it. And in that shift, a space opens. A space where you can breathe, where you can say, "This is a difficult sensation, but I am here, feeling it, and I am still whole." I learned this not in meditation, but in a field. I had twisted my ankle badly on a walk, a sharp, stupid injury that left me immobile and frustrated. Stuck under a tree, I was furious, at myself, at the root I tripped over, at the disruption of my plans. The mental storm was intense. Then, out of sheer helplessness, I stopped. I brought my attention, reluctantly, to the throbbing pain itself. Not the story of the pain, but the raw data of it. A pulsating heat. A sharp ache with defined edges. A dull, spreading pressure. As I observed it with this curious, almost scientific detachment, something shifted. The pain didn't vanish, but my war with it did. The I that was angry separated from the it that was throbbing. I was the spacious awareness surrounding the sensation. The pain became a weather system within the sky of my body. I began to notice other sensations, the cool grass beneath my hands, the smell of damp earth, the sound of a bird calling. The pain became one note in a complex symphony of present moment experience, not the entire concert. That ankle was my teacher. It forced me out of my head and into the wisdom of the body. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is touching the earth. It is this grounding, this return from the abstract suffering of the mind to the simple, manageable reality of the senses. Your body is your most immediate gateway to peace. When lost, feel your feet. When afraid, feel your breath. Come home to the temple of skin and bone. It is always here, waiting for you. This grounded awareness naturally expands into how we meet our desires and our sense of lack. The modern world is a masterful architect of craving. It shows us gleaming images of what we could be, should be, must have to be happy. We then spend our lives running on a treadmill toward that shimmering horizon, growing exhausted and disillusioned. The Buddha identified this very treadmill, tanha, as the engine of suffering. But his solution was not to destroy desire for a good meal or a meaningful connection. It was to understand its nature. I like to think of it as the difference between drinking from a mirage and drinking from a spring. The mirage promises an endless, glorious lake just over the next dune. It pulls you forward, parched and desperate. The spring is at your feet, a small, clear pool of water. It may not be a lake, but it is real, it is nourishing, and it is present. Our suffering amplifies when we spend our life chasing mirages, the mirage of the perfect life, the perfect state of mind, the perfect moment when all problems are solved. We overlook the spring of the present moment, with its imperfect but tangible offerings, this breath, this view from the window, this cup of tea, this ability to listen. I remember a man I met in a bustling city. He was a street sweeper, a job many would consider lowly. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace, making patterns with his broom in the fallen leaves. I asked him if the job ever felt monotonous. He paused, leaned on his broom, and looked at me with clear, calm eyes. "I am not sweeping streets," he said. "I am having a conversation with this patch of ground. I listen to the sound of the bristles. I watch the leaves gather. I feel the sun on my neck. Each sweep is new. The city rushes past, chasing its mirages. I have found my spring, right here." He was not denying reality, he was seeing it more deeply. He had shifted his attention from the horizon of something better to the ground of what is. In that shift, he found a dignity and peace that no external achievement could grant. The Buddha's path is this refinement of attention. It is turning away from the exhausting chase of the mirage and kneeling down to drink deeply from the spring that is your life, exactly as it is in this moment. The contentment you seek is not at the end of the chase. It is in the choice to stop running and taste the water that has always been here. This leads us to a powerful, often misunderstood Buddhist concept, non-attachment. It is not cold detachment, not a lack of love or care. It is the wise understanding of the river's nature. If you try to hold water in your clenched fist, you end up with nothing but a wet, tense hand and frustration. If you cup your hands gently, you can hold the water, admire it, drink from it, and then let it flow on when it is time. Non-attachment is the open, cupped hand. You love deeply, you engage fully, you care for your work and your relationships with all your heart. But you do not clench. You do not demand that the water never change shape or never flow downstream. You understand the impermanent, flowing nature of all things, Anicca. This applies profoundly to your own identity. The you that is suffering today is not the same you that laughed last year, or that will feel courage next month. You are a river. To be attached to a fixed idea of yourself. I am a failure, I am a victim, I am unlovable, is to try to freeze the river in one moment of its journey. It creates immense suffering. Non-attachment to self is the allowing of your own flow. It is saying, this is how the river looks and feels today. It is muddy and slow. I will care for it, but I will not mistake this for its permanent state. You release the clenched fist around a fixed story, and in that release, you allow the next bend in the river to reveal itself. Now, let us consider the nature of effort itself. In times of struggle, we often believe that trying harder is the only virtuous path. We grit our teeth, tense our muscles, and push against the weight with sheer force of will. While discipline is vital, Buddhism introduces a nuanced, essential counterpart, virya, or right effort. This is not the effort of the ox straining against the yoke. It is the effort of the sailor adjusting the sails. You cannot control the wind, but you can learn its patterns and position your sails to harness its energy for your journey. Right effort is intelligent, responsive, and often looks like relaxation rather than strain. It is the effort to let go of a toxic thought, not to wrestle it into submission. It is the effort to bring a kind attention to a wounded feeling, not to angrily suppress it. It is the effort to rest when you are truly depleted, not to glorify burnout as a badge of honor. The Buddha's middle way avoids the extremes of harsh asceticism and indulgent laziness. It is the balanced, sustainable effort of the sailor, working with the conditions of life, not in a state of war against them. I saw this embodied in a master archer who visited the temple. Students expected to see immense physical strength, a taut bow, a forceful release. Instead, his movements were fluid, almost soft. His focus was not on the target, but on his own alignment. The placement of his feet, the curve of his back, the gentle pressure of his fingers. The release of the arrow seemed like an afterthought, a natural consequence of perfect internal harmony. The target, he said, does not need your aggression. It only needs your clarity. Your effort is not to hit it. Your effort is to become so clear, so still, that the arrow's path is inevitable. Our goals are like that target. We often approach them with aggression, with a desperate trying that scatters our energy and clouds our clarity. Right effort is the cultivation of that inner alignment, ethical conduct, mindful awareness, compassionate intention. When your internal posture is clear and balanced, your actions in the world become precise, effective, and imbued with a grace that force can never achieve. So when you feel you are straining, step back. Ask not, how can I push harder? But, how can I align myself more truly? Where is my grip too tight? Where is my vision clouded by desire? The effort is in the softening, the clarifying, the aligning. The release will take care of itself. Within this understanding of effort, we must make space for a truth that is often neglected, the sacredness of rest. In a culture that idolizes relentless productivity, rest can feel like failure, like quitting. But in the Buddha's teaching, wise rest is an essential component of the path. It is passaddhi, tranquility. You would not blame a field for lying fallow, you would understand it is gathering nutrients for the next planting. Your mind and spirit are the same. The times you feel absolutely drained, unable to try anymore, are not signs of weakness. They are the fallow periods. They are your system's intelligent demand for integration, for deep nourishment. To refuse rest is to try to harvest a crop you never allowed to root. The practice here is to reframe rest not as a surrender to the obstacle, but as a strategic, respectful engagement with your own humanity. It is the sailor lowering the sails in a storm, not to abandon the ship, but to ensure it does not capsize. It is the compassionate pause that allows for healing and insight to arise from a place deeper than conscious striving. I learned this from watching a potter at her wheel. She would work a lump of clay with intense focus, centering it, raising the walls, shaping the form. But then, at a crucial point, she would stop. She would sit back, wipe her hands, and simply look at the evolving vessel. She called these moments letting the clay remember its shape. If she kept pulling and pressing without these pauses, the form would become wobbly, thin, and would eventually collapse. The rest was part of the creation. Your life is that clay. Your active efforts are the shaping. Your periods of exhaustion, your need to step back and simply breathe, these are not failures of creation. They are the essential moments, letting the clay remember its shape. They are when your subconscious integrates lessons, when your spirit settles into its new form. Do not villainize your need for stillness. Honor it as a sacred phase of the creative process of becoming yourself. The Buddha himself rested under the Bodhi tree. His enlightenment was not the result of frantic seeking in that moment, but of profound, receptive rest after a long journey. Sometimes, the most profound effort is to be still and let the truth find you. This brings us to a subtle but powerful shift, from seeking happiness to ending suffering. We are often taught that life is a quest to acquire happiness, as if it were an object to be found and kept. The Buddha's approach was profoundly different. He focused on the end of suffering, dukkha nirodha. Think of it like this: if you have a thorn in your foot, your primary goal is not to go find a beautiful flower to hold. Your immediate, wise goal is to remove the thorn. The removal of the thorn brings immediate relief. The flower can come later. Our minds are often full of thorns: the thorn of resentment, the thorn of anxiety about the future, the thorn of regret about the past. We try to cover these thorns with flowers. Distractions, achievements, pleasures, but the thorns remain, festering. The spiritual work is to gently, patiently, remove the thorns. This is often less glamorous than the quest for flowers. It involves looking honestly at your pain, understanding its cause, and letting it go. But the relief is immediate and profound. Each thorn removed creates a space of ease. Over time, with many thorns removed, you discover that a natural, unforced well-being was underneath all along, no longer punctured by barbs. This is the peace the Buddha described. It is not a euphoric acquisition, it is the quiet, profound relief of a mind that is no longer its own enemy. So when you feel down, don't ask, "Where can I find happiness?" Ask the more surgical, compassionate question: what thorn is causing the most pain right now? Can I gently begin to remove it? Let's explore a concept that can transform our deepest valleys, the idea of spiritual composting. In a garden, not all waste is trash. The spent blooms, the fallen leaves, the peelings from the kitchen, they are gathered into a pile. Over time, with heat and patience, they decompose. What was once considered useless refuse breaks down into a dark, rich, fragrant substance, humus. This humus doesn't just feed plants. It transforms the very structure of the soil, making it alive, fertile, and resilient. The Buddha's teachings on transformation work in precisely this way. Your failures, your embarrassments, your heartaches, the parts of your past you wish to discard, these are not spiritual trash. They are your raw organic material. The practice of mindful awareness and compassionate reflection is the heat of the compost pile. It is the conscious turning over of these experiences, not to wallow in them, but to allow the alchemy of wisdom to break them down. In time, they cease to be sources of shame and become sources of nourishment. They become the rich soil from which empathy, resilience, and deep understanding grow. The most beautiful and sturdy flowers in your character are fed by what you once thought was only waste. So, do not reject your past struggles. Gather them. Tend to your inner compost pile with kindness. Trust the process of transformation. The most fertile ground for your future is being prepared in the quiet, dark decomposition of your yesterday's pains. I witnessed a powerful example of this in an unexpected teacher, an old, gnarled tree in a windswept place. Its trunk was twisted and bore deep scars from lightning strikes. Its branches were asymmetrical, shaped by decades of prevailing gusts. By any conventional standard of beauty, it was flawed. Yet, it was utterly majestic. It had a presence, a story etched into its very fiber. It provided unique shelter in its hollows for birds and small creatures. Its twisted form created a sculpture more interesting than any perfectly symmetrical tree in a sheltered grove. Its scars were not weaknesses, they were records of survival, testaments to a dialogue with the elements. It had composted every storm, every strike, into its strength and character. We often look at our own scars, emotional, psychological, as pure flaws, things to hide or fix. Buddhism invites us to see them as the unique grain in our wood, the evidence of our dialogue with life. They are what make you, you. They are not imperfections in a perfect plan, they are the plan itself. Your value is not in spite of your scars and twists, but intimately woven through them. Like the tree, you provide shelter and beauty precisely from the places that have been shaped by the wind. This understanding naturally leads us to the practice of forgiveness, which in Buddhism is deeply tied to releasing poison, not condoning action. Holding resentment is like drinking a vial of poison and hoping the other person dies. It is a burden you carry, a thorn you refuse to remove. Forgiveness, in this context, is not saying what happened was okay. It is the radical act of setting down the poison veil so you can heal. It is a gift you give yourself to stop the past from continuously harming your present. It is an application of the law of impermanence, that moment of hurt is gone. The story you keep replaying is a ghost, a memory you animate with your attention. To forgive is to stop feeding the ghost. It is to turn your life force toward building something new in the present, rather than maintaining a ruin from the past. This is often a process, not a single event. It begins with the wish to be free from the pain of the resentment itself. You may start with a simple, internal sentence, "For the sake of my own peace, I am willing to begin letting this go." This is not weakness, it is the ultimate strength. It is the compost pile at work, taking a toxic experience and beginning its long transformation into fertilizer for wisdom. There is a quiet parable about two monks traveling. They came to a river where a young woman stood, afraid to cross. The older monk, without a word, picked her up, carried her across, set her down, and continued walking. Hours later, the younger monk, deeply agitated, finally burst out, "Master, we have taken vows not to touch women. How could you carry her?" The older monk smiled gently and replied, "I set her down by the river hours ago. You are still carrying her." We do this constantly. We carry the person who wronged us, the old mistake, the missed opportunity, for miles and years beyond the actual event. The practice is to notice you are carrying them, and then, with great compassion for your own tired arms, to set them down. You set them down not where they deserve to be, but simply because your journey forward requires free hands. This is the heart of Buddhist forgiveness. Now, let's address a feeling that often accompanies being down, the sense of meaninglessness. When efforts seem to fail and roads seem to close, we can ask, what is the point? Buddhism responds not with a grandiose, pre-packaged meaning, but with an invitation to assign profound value to the quality of your attention itself. The point is not necessarily the outcome, but the consciousness you bring to the process. Consider a stone cutter, hammering a rock. The 100th blow may split it, but the split does not come from that blow alone. It comes from all 99 that came before. The 99 failed blows were not meaningless. They were each essential, each changing the structure of the stone invisibly, making the final split possible. Your failed attempts, your days of feeling no progress, are those 99 blows. They are not wasted. They are altering your internal structure, making you ready for a breakthrough you cannot yet see. The meaning is in the faithful striking, in the commitment to the work itself, regardless of immediate result. The Buddha taught karma as intentional action. The meaning is built into the intention and the quality of the effort, not held hostage by a specific, desired fruit. By focusing on bringing patience, kindness, and integrity to this very blow, this very moment, you invest the process itself with supreme meaning. You become a master stone cutter, who finds dignity and purpose in the rhythm of the work, trusting the split will come in its own time. I was taught this by the ocean's waves. I once spent weeks observing waves crash against a cliff. Each wave would surge forward with immense power, only to smash into the rock and recede, seemingly accomplishing nothing. Yet, over centuries, those same waves carved caves, arches, and smoothed stone into sand. No single wave could see the cathedral it was helping to carve. It simply fulfilled its nature, surge and retreat, surge and retreat. Your days, your efforts, are like those waves. A day of patience and frustration is a wave smoothing a rough edge. An act of kindness when you are hurting is a wave carving a hidden arch. You may not see the grand coastline you are shaping, but you are shaping it. Your life has meaning not as a single, triumphant tsunami, but as the cumulative, faithful rhythm of countless waves, each doing its necessary, if seemingly invisible, work. Trust the ocean you are a part of. Keep faithfully being your wave. Now, Let's turn our attention to a quiet power we all possess but often forget, the power of deep listening. In our pain, the mind becomes a loud, crowded room of our own thoughts, fears shouting, regrets arguing, plans frantically talking over each other. We try to think our way out, but we are only adding to the noise. Buddhism offers a profound alternative. Samavaka, or right speech, begins with right listening. But not just listening to others. It is the practice of listening to life itself. It is the practice of becoming silent enough to hear the world speak in a language deeper than words. When you are feeling down, try this: stop trying to solve it. Just listen. Listen to the sound of the air moving. Listen to the distant hum of the world. Listen to the symphony of silence beneath the noise. In that deep listening, a space opens. The crowded room of your mind begins to quiet. You are no longer just the voices. You are the one who hears them. And in that shift, you find a point of stillness that the storm cannot touch. This is not passive. It is an active, receptive engagement with reality. The Buddha listened to the sound of a plucked lute string to understand the middle way, not too tight, not too loose. Listen to your own life. What is its note right now? Is it tense? Is it slack? The wisdom for adjustment comes not from more thinking, but from deeper listening. I learned this from a master carpenter who worked in the temple. He would often lay his hand flat on a piece of wood, close his eyes, and be perfectly still for a long time. When I asked, he said, "I am listening to the wood. It tells me where it wants to be cut, where its grain wants to flow, where its weakness and strength lie. If I only follow my plan, I fight the wood and the piece will fail. If I listen first, we work together." Your life is that piece of wood. Your plans and desires are your design. But have you listened to the grain of your own being? To the natural flow of your energy, your limits, your deepest inclinations? Or are you forcing a cut against the grain, creating splinters and internal fractures? The feeling of being down is often the splintering sound of a plant fighting the grain. The practice is to stop. Lay a hand on your own heart, metaphorically. Close the eyes of judgment. Listen. What is the true grain of this situation? Where does your energy naturally want to flow, even if it's not where you thought you should go? Wisdom is not imposed from a blueprint, it is heard in the quiet communion with the material of your own existence. Trust what you hear in the silence. This practice of listening extends to our relationship with uncertainty, the great fear that often underpins our sadness. We want guarantees. We want to know that if we do X, Y will surely follow. Life offers no such contract. The Buddha's teaching embraces this directly. The nature of existence is Anicca, impermanent and uncertain. To demand certainty from an uncertain world is to set yourself up for relentless anxiety. It is like demanding that the ocean hold still so you can walk on it. The spiritual skill is not in stopping the waves, but in learning to surf. It is in developing a balance that can ride the motion. This balance comes from trust. Not trust in a specific outcome, but trust in your own capacity to meet whatever outcome arises. It is trust in your own resilience, your own wisdom, your own ability to breathe and adapt. You build this trust not in calm seas, but by remembering all the times you have already weathered a storm. You have a 100% survival rate so far. That is not a small thing. Your history is evidence of your innate, often unnoticed, resilience. I remember a friend, a sailor, who told me about navigating by dead reckoning in a fog. With no visible landmarks or stars, he had to trust his compass, his recorded speed, and his intuition of the current. He said the greatest danger wasn't the fog, but the panic that would make him second-guess his instruments and spin the wheel erratically. You must make your best calculation, he said, then hold the wheel steady with a gentle hand, and trust that you are moving, even if you can't see the shore. Our journeys through difficult times are often like that. The fog of confusion rolls in. We lose sight of our goals, our progress. The temptation is to panic, to spin the wheel of our decisions wildly, grasping for any sign of land. Buddhism teaches the gentle hand on the wheel. The steady, daily practice of mindfulness, ethics, and compassion. These are your compass and your logged course. You may not see the shore, but you can trust that holding this steady course is moving you in the right direction. The fog will lift. Until it does, your peace is found in the steadiness of your hand, not in the desperate need for a visible finish line. This leads us to a beautiful reframe of our relationship with the people we perceive as causing our pain or standing in our way. The Buddhist concept of mudita, or appreciative joy, is often directed at feeling happy for others' success. But it has a deeper, more challenging application, finding the hidden gift in the person who troubles you. They are your sandpaper. A piece of fine wood does not become smooth and beautiful by being wrapped in velvet. It becomes beautiful by being rubbed, repeatedly, with coarse sandpaper. The person who irritates you, challenges you, or opposes you is that sandpaper. They are rubbing away your rough edges of impatience, your splinters of pride, your uneven surface of judgment. It does not feel good in the moment. It feels like friction and heat. But if you can meet that friction not with hatred for the sandpaper, but with a commitment to the beauty of the wood, the entire dynamic changes. You can inwardly say, "Thank you for sanding this edge of me. I was rough here." This does not mean you must submit to abuse. It means you change your internal relationship to the friction. You see the other not as a villain in your story, but as an abrasive, involuntary teacher in your finishing school. This perspective transforms resentment into a kind of gritty gratitude. It empowers you by making you the student, not the victim, of the interaction. The goal is not a smooth life free of friction. The goal is to become a beautiful, finished piece through the necessary friction of being human among humans. Consider the humble oyster. It does not choose the grain of sand that irritates its soft flesh. It has no power to eject it. Its only choice is how to respond. It begins to secrete a substance, layer upon layer, to soothe the irritation. Over years, this secretion around the unwanted, painful grit forms a pearl. The most beautiful pearl comes from the most persistent irritant. Your difficult relationships, your frustrating circumstances, are that grain of sand. You cannot always eject them immediately. But you have a choice in your secretion. Will you secrete layers of bitterness, resentment, and hardness? Or will you secrete layers of understanding, patience, and compassionate boundary setting? The process is slow and hidden. But in time, what was once a painful irritant becomes the nucleus of your greatest strength and beauty, the pearl of your wisdom. The irritant didn't create the pearl. Your response to it did. You are the oyster. Your nature is to create beauty from grit. Remember this when you feel the sharp edge of a problem you cannot immediately solve. Begin the gentle, patient work of secretion. Layer upon layer of mindful response. A pearl is being made. Let's explore a dimension of practice that is often the quiet bedrock of transformation, the cultivation of inner space. When we are in pain, our world contracts. It feels small, tight, suffocating. Every thought loops back to the problem, every sensation seems to confirm the distress. Buddhism teaches the profound art of creating mental and emotional space, cittavisuddhi, or purification of the mind. This is not about pushing the pain away. It is about ceasing to crowd it. Imagine a crying child. If you hover over them, panicking, asking, "What's wrong?" What's wrong? Their distress often amplifies. But if you simply sit beside them, creating a calm, spacious presence, their crying often subsides into sobs, then sniffles, then a weary sigh as they lean into you. Your own pain is that child. Your worried, frantic thinking is the hovering panic. The practice is to sit beside your pain. To create a sky-like awareness around the storm of feeling. You don't argue with it. You don't try to fix it immediately. You simply make room for it to exist. You give it permission to be there, without it having to take over the entire house of your consciousness. In that allowance, in that creation of inner space, the pain often loses its oppressive density. It may still be there, but it is no longer everything. You have reminded yourself that you are vaster than any single feeling. This spaciousness is the precursor to clarity and true healing. I learned this not from a teacher, but from watching a weaver untangle a magnificent snarl of threads. I expected her to pick and pull with sharp, impatient tools. Instead, she laid the whole mess on a large, clean table. She first just looked at it, her hands still. Then, with infinite patience, she began to gently push the mass apart, creating little openings, small pockets of order within the chaos. She did not yank any single thread. She worked from the edges of the tangle inward, always seeking to enlarge the spaces between the knots. Over hours, what seemed an impossible knot became separate, flowing threads again. Our emotional and mental tangles are like that. When we are down, we try to pull on the most obvious, painful thread. Why did this happen? How do I fix it? And often just tighten the knot. The Buddhist approach is the weaver's way. Create space first. Through breath, through stepping back, through a walk in nature, you lay the tangle on the wide table of awareness. You gently push thoughts apart, not to eliminate them, but to see there is space between them. This is the feeling of sadness, and here is the sound of a bird, and here is the sensation of my foot on the ground. You enlarge the pockets of peace within the chaos. From those pockets, clarity emerges on how to proceed. The untangling becomes possible, not through force, but through the persistent, gentle creation of space. This spacious awareness allows us to meet a particularly challenging visitor, boredom. In our low moments, when energy is sapped, a dull, restless boredom can set in. Nothing inspires, everything feels flat. We interpret this as a sign that life itself has lost its meaning. But in the context of meditation, boredom is seen as a key signpost. It signifies that the mind is withdrawing its interest from its usual, distracting entertainments and is coming face to face with the raw, simple fabric of existence. It is a withdrawal from the sugar rush of constant stimulation. This boredom is not an enemy, it is a threshold. Behind the curtain of nothing to do and nothing interesting lies the profound, quiet richness of simply being. The practice here is to not run from the boredom. To sit with it as you would sit with a silent companion. To inquire, what is here when the demand for entertainment stops? Often, beneath the restlessness, you will find a deep peace you mistook for emptiness. You will find the clarity of a still pond, once the ripples of craving settle. The Buddha's enlightenment occurred not in a state of excitement, but in a profound, settled attention that saw through the illusion of all transient pleasures. Your boredom, met with curiosity instead of resistance, can be a doorway to a more authentic, less frantic, form of contentment. I recall a winter I spent in near isolation, with very few books or distractions. For the first week, the boredom was agonizing. I paced. I lamented. Then, out of sheer exhaustion, I stopped. I just sat and looked at the same patch of forest day after day. Slowly, my perception deepened. I began to notice the subtle shifts in the gray bark of the trees as the light changed. I saw the intricate social dances of the birds at the feeder, personalities emerging I had never noticed. I felt the subtle, ancient rhythm of the days, light, dark, cold, breath. The boredom had sanded down my need for high-stimulus experience and revealed a world of immense, intricate, quiet wonder that was always there. My down time became a deep time. The feeling of being down had forced me into a slower gear, and in that slowness, I discovered a richness that busyness had blinded me to. If you are in a flat, bored, low-energy period, consider it may not be a depression, but an invitation. An invitation to put down the dazzling kaleidoscope and learn to see the beauty in a single, plain stone. From this place of spaciousness and deep attention, we can address the voice of the inner critic with newfound skill. That voice, the one that says, "You're not good enough, you always fail, you should be further along," is often loudest when we are down. Buddhism helps us see this voice not as the truth-telling authority, but as a conditioned mental habit, a sankhara. It is a recording playing on a loop, not a live broadcast from reality. The practice is to listen to it with the same detached curiosity you would listen to a malfunctioning radio, sputtering static. You note, that not good enough story is playing again. You do not argue with the static. You simply acknowledge its presence, and perhaps gently adjust the dial back to the present moment, to the breath, to a physical sensation. You deprive the story of the belief fuel it needs to burn. Every time you notice it without fighting it or believing it, its volume decreases. Over time, you realize you are not the listener of the broken radio, you are the room in which it temporarily sits. And you can choose to pay your attention to other, more beautiful sounds. There is a powerful Zen story of a student who complained bitterly to his master about his own angry temperament, his laziness, his unkind thoughts. He saw himself as a vessel full of flaws. The master took him to a window overlooking a muddy, churning river after a storm. "Look at the river," the master said. "It is full of silt, debris, and is ugly. Then he took him to a different window, weeks later, overlooking the same river on a clear, still day. The water was calm, clear, and reflected the sky perfectly. "Is the river the mud?" the master asked. "Or is the mud just what the river carries when it is stirred up? Your negative thoughts, your self-criticism, are the mud. Your true nature is the clear, reflective water. The storms of life stir up the mud from the bottom. The practice is not to hate the mud or to identify yourself as muddy. The practice is to be still. To allow the agitation to settle. In the stillness, the mud sinks, and your natural clarity returns. When the inner critic speaks, see it as stirred up mud. Your job is not to analyze each particle of dirt, but to cultivate stillness. In stillness, the criticism loses its power to cloud your self-view. You remember you are the water, not the temporary sediment you carry. We arrive now at a principle that weaves through all we've discussed, the unity of the journey and the destination. In our striving, we often see peace, happiness, or success as a distant shore we must arduously swim toward. We see our current state, especially when we are down, as being, in the water, separate from where we want to be. Buddhism gently dissolves this illusion. The peace you seek is not on the far shore. It is in the quality of your swimming. Enlightenment, nibbana, is not a place to get to, it is a way of seeing, a way of being, that is available in this very breath. The path is not a line connecting a bad point A to a good point B. The path is a circle, or better yet, a sphere. You are at the center. Every step, even the one that feels like a stumble backward, is a step on the path if taken with awareness. The feeling of being down is not you falling off the path. It is the path itself, presenting you with its most direct teaching on impermanence, compassion, and the nature of the self. When you stop seeing your present moment as an obstacle to your future peace and instead see it as the very material from which peace is forged, everything transforms. The goal and the journey become one. You are not a traveler trying to reach the mountain, you are the mountain, experiencing seasons of sun and storm. I was given a perfect metaphor for this by a geologist. She showed me a seemingly ordinary river stone, smooth and oval. She said, this shape was not its goal. The river did not say, I will make you an oval. The stone became an oval through total immersion in the process. Every bump against another rock, every tumble in the current, every silent rest in the gravel bed, all of it, over eons, contributed to this form. Its beauty is the direct record of its journey. There was no separation. You are that stone. Your character, your wisdom, your gentle strength, is being shaped by the total immersion in your life's current, the joyful flows and the painful bumps. The person you will become is not waiting for you at the end. They are being sculpted, here and now, by how you meet this very moment. There is no way to bypass the river. There is only the allowing of the river to shape you, with as much grace and awareness as you can muster. Your smoothness will come from the tumbling, not in spite of it. This understanding brings us to the final, and perhaps most important, pillar, faith. Not blind faith in a dogma, but a profound, gut-level trust in the process of life itself, as reflected in the Dhamma, the universal law the Buddha discovered. It is the trust that just as a seed contains the intelligence to become a tree, your heart contains the intelligence to heal, to learn, to grow toward light. It is the trust that the principles of cause and effect, of impermanence, of interconnectedness, are as reliable as gravity. When you plant seeds of mindful action, of ethical speech, of compassionate thought, you are tending an inner garden. You may not see sprouts tomorrow, but you can have faith in the law of growth. This faith is your anchor in the storm. It is the whisper that says, this too is part of the process. I am not being punished, I am being shaped. I am not lost. I am in the river. This faith is not passive. It is the courage to take the next small, right step, even when you can't see the entire staircase, because you trust the law that solid ground will meet your foot. I will close with a very old story from the tradition of Monk's Moon Temple. It is said there was a seeker who climbed the great mountain to find a sage and ask the secret to a peaceful life. After a grueling journey, he found the sage sitting in front of a simple hut, looking at a gnarled, ancient juniper tree. "Master," the seeker panted, "I have struggled so much. My life is full of hardship. Please, give me the wisdom to end my suffering." The sage did not look away from the tree. He pointed to it and asked, "Do you see this tree? Notice the trunk. It is twisted from decades of wind. That bend there is from an ice storm. That scar is from lightning. Its shape is a map of every difficulty it has ever faced." The seeker, disappointed, said, "Yes, it is ugly and misshapen from its suffering." The sage finally turned, his eyes clear and kind. "No. You misunderstand. The tree is not misshapen from its suffering. It is beautiful because of its wise response to each difficulty. It bent when it needed to bend so it would not break. It compartmentalized the lightning scar so the rest could live. It grew deeper roots when the winds were strong. Its beauty is not the naive perfection of a sapling in a greenhouse. Its beauty is its intelligent, resilient dialogue with life itself. That is peace. Not a life without storms, but a life that has learned, through every storm, how to grow more beautifully, more strongly, more authentically as itself." The seeker sat in silence, and for the first time, he saw his own life struggles not as flaws in his story, but as the very elements shaping its unique, resilient, and ultimately beautiful form. He had found his answer not in a formula, but in a new way of seeing. So, to you who are listening, who may feel bent by the wind or scarred by lightning, please, see yourself as that juniper tree. Your value, your strength, your profound beauty, is being crafted in real time by your wise, often unconscious, responses to life's weather. You are not off the path. You are the path. You are not distant from peace. You are learning its deepest language through the very feelings you wish to escape. Keep going. Not with clenched teeth, but with a gentle, persistent trust. Tend your inner garden with the tools of mindfulness and compassion. Be the sky for your weather. Be the water, allowing the mud to settle. Be the stone in the river, being smoothed into a form of grace you cannot yet imagine. Your story is not a tragedy. It is a masterpiece of resilience in the making. And you are both the artist and the art. Thank you for spending this time in the quiet space of Monk's Moon Temple. May you carry this sense of gentle, unshakable presence with you. May you be kind to yourself. May you remember your true nature, always.